Yuna woke up at the same time she always did. Her small room was cold, and the metal walls hummed with the sound of the space station. She got dressed in her gray uniform, ate a small breakfast, and walked to work. This was her life. It had been her life for 6 years, ever since her mother died and left her the job. She was a mail courier on Orbital Station 12. It was not an important job. It was not even a noticed job. She carried packages from one place to another, and nobody looked at her twice. The station was full of aliens from 100 different worlds. Tall creatures with 4 arms, small creatures with glowing skin, and sometimes the dragons. The dragons ruled everything. Their empire covered 3 galaxies, and every species lived under their shadow. They were beautiful and terrifying. The smallest dragons were 10 feet tall. The largest ones could swallow ships. Their scales shimmered like precious metals, and their eyes held intelligence older than human civilization. Humans were nothing special in this empire. They had arrived as refugees 200 years ago, running from a dying world. The dragons let them stay, gave them small jobs, and mostly forgot about them. Yuna had never spoken to a dragon in her life. Why would she? She was just a courier. That morning, she loaded her hover cart with packages. There were medical supplies for the lower levels. There were luxury items for the merchant quarters. And there was one small box marked for the upper ring, where the important people lived. The upper ring was where the dragon ambassador kept his quarters. Yuna had never been there before. Usually, senior couriers handled those deliveries. But today, everyone else was busy, and the package needed to go. She pushed her cart through the crowded corridors. Aliens of every shape moved around her, talking in languages she did not understand. Nobody looked at her. Nobody stepped aside for her. She was used to that. Being invisible was comfortable. Being invisible was safe. The lift to the upper ring required special clearance. Yuna showed her delivery papers to the security scanner, and the doors opened. The lift rose smoothly, and when it stopped, she stepped into a different world. The upper ring was beautiful. The floors were polished stone. The walls had paintings that probably cost more than she would earn in a lifetime. The air smelled clean and fresh, not like the recycled air in the lower levels. Yuna felt very small and very plain in her gray uniform. She followed the signs to the ambassador's quarters. 2 dragon guards stood at the entrance. They were 15 feet tall with scales as black as space. Their eyes glowed like hot coals. Yuna had never been this close to dragons before. Her heart beat fast, but she kept walking. She had a job to do. She stopped in front of them and held up her delivery papers. She opened her mouth to speak, and then something strange happened. Both dragons went completely still. Their glowing eyes widened. Their pupils, which were vertical slits, suddenly expanded until they were almost round. Yuna watched in confusion as the 2 massive creatures began to shake. Then they lowered themselves to the ground. Their great heads touched the floor, their wings folded tight against their bodies. They were bowing. Not a small bow of greeting, but a deep bow of complete submission. Yuna looked behind her. Someone important must be coming. Someone the dragons respected. But the corridor was empty. There was nobody there except her. She turned back to the guards. They were still bowing. One of them was making a sound, low and rumbling. It took Yuna a moment to realize he was speaking. The words were in the old dragon tongue, a language she had never learned, but somehow she felt them. They resonated in her chest like music. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice came out as a whisper. The dragons did not answer. They did not move. Yuna did not know what to do. She was just a courier. She was supposed to deliver a package, not deal with whatever this was. So she did the only thing she could think of. She walked past the bowing dragons, left the package at the door, and walked away. She walked fast. Then she ran. She did not stop until she was back in the lift, and she did not breathe normally until she was back in the lower levels where she belonged. She told herself it was nothing. The dragons were sick, maybe, or they were practicing some ritual she did not understand. It had nothing to do with her. It could not have anything to do with her. She finished her shift. She went home. She ate dinner alone in her small room. She tried to sleep. At midnight, someone knocked on her door. Yuna opened it and found herself looking at a dragon. This one was different from the guards. He was old. His scales, once probably golden, had faded to a pale yellow. His eyes were cloudy with age, but he held himself with dignity. And when he saw her, he slowly lowered his great body to the floor. He kneeled at her door. In the narrow corridor of the human housing block, surrounded by peeling paint and flickering lights, an ancient dragon kneeled before a mail courier. "Please," Yuna said. "Please stop, I do not understand." The old dragon looked up at her. When he spoke, his voice was gentle and filled with wonder. "We have waited 10,000 years, he said. "We had forgotten what you looked like. We had forgotten everything except the feeling of your fire. But our blood remembers. Our bones remember." He pressed his head to the floor again. "Welcome back, First Flame Bearer. Welcome home." Yuna stood in her doorway, still wearing her gray uniform, still smelling like the recycled air of the lower levels. She was a mail courier. She was nobody. And an empire of dragons had just found her. The old dragon's name was Beko. He would not stand until Yuna invited him inside, but her apartment was far too small for him. So they talked in the corridor, with his great head resting near her doorway and his body stretching down the hall. Other humans came out of their rooms to watch. They stood in their doorways with wide eyes, too afraid to speak. Dragons did not come to the lower levels. Dragons certainly did not kneel before human women who delivered mail. "You have made a mistake," Yuna said. "I am nobody. I carry packages. That is all I do." Baeko's old eyes were patient. "May I tell you a story?" Yuna did not want to hear a story. She wanted to go back to her normal life, but she could not be rude to a dragon, so she nodded. "Dragons have ancestral memory," Beko began. "When a dragon dies, pieces of their memories pass to their children. Not everything, just fragments, feelings, images. Over thousands of generations, these fragments build up. Every dragon carries the experiences of all their ancestors inside them." Yuna had not known this. Humans knew very little about dragons. "Deep in our shared memory," Beko continued, "there is an image. It is the oldest memory we have. It shows a being who walked among our first ancestors before we had fire, before we had wings, before we were anything but simple creatures crawling in the dark. This being carried light inside her. She touched our ancestors, and she gave them the spark of creation. She gave us our fire." "That cannot be a human," Yuna said. "Humans only came here 200 years ago." Beko made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That is what you believe. That is what you have been told. But the memory is clear. The being who gave us fire looked exactly like you. Not similar. Exactly. The same face. The same energy. The same light. That is impossible. Many things are impossible until they happen." Yuna shook her head. This was too much. She was tired. She had work tomorrow. "I need to sleep," she said. "Please go away." Beko rose slowly. "The High Council will send for you. You will not be able to refuse them. But I wanted you to know the truth before they make their demands." He bowed his head one more time. "I have waited my whole life to meet you. Thank you for letting me see your face." He walked away down the corridor. Yuna closed her door and stood in the darkness of her room. Her hands were shaking. The next morning, the station was different. Word had spread. When Yuna walked to work, people stared at her. Aliens who had never noticed her before now watched her pass. Some whispered to each other. Some pointed. Her friend Dohwan was waiting for her at the courier station. He was also human, a few years older than her, with worried eyes and a practical nature. "What did you do?" he asked. "Nothing. I delivered a package. There are dragons asking about you. Official dragons. Council dragons." Do-Wan pulled her into a quiet corner. "Yuna, you need to tell me what happened." So she told him. About the guards who bowed. About Baeko and his story. About the impossible claim that she was somehow connected to the beginning of dragon civilization. Do-Wan listened without interrupting. When she finished, his face was pale. "This is not good," he said. "I know it is not true. It does not matter if it is true. What matters is that they believe it." He looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Prophecies are dangerous things. Throughout history, people who get caught up in prophecies usually end up dead. The powerful do not like it when something challenges their power. Before Yuna could respond, a message came through the station speakers. Her name. Her full name. She was summoned to the commander's office immediately. The commander was not human. He was a tall alien with gray skin and too many eyes. He looked at Yuna like she was a problem he did not know how to solve. "You are being transferred," he said. "Effective immediately. A ship is waiting to take you to Hwaryong." Hwaryong, the dragon homeworld, the capital of the empire. "I do not want to go," Yuna said. The commander's many eyes blinked. "That is not a choice you get to make." The ship was a dragon warship. It was bigger than anything Yuna had ever seen. When she walked through its corridors, following the guards who escorted her, every dragon she passed kneeled. Soldiers in armor, officers on duty, servants carrying supplies. They all stopped what they were doing and lowered themselves to the floor. Yuna walked through a tunnel of bowing figures. It was the longest walk of her life. Do-Hwan had insisted on coming with her. He had no right to be there, but he had argued and pushed and made himself so annoying that they let him on the ship just to make him quiet. Now he walked beside her, his face tight with fear. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. "I want to go home." "I know. Me too." The journey to Hwaryong took 3 days. Yuna spent most of it in her cabin, refusing to come out. She could not face more dragons kneeling. She could not face the weight of their expectations. On the 3rd day, she felt the ship slow down. She looked out her window and saw the planet below. Hwaryong was beautiful. It was covered in mountains and volcanoes. Rivers of lava painted bright orange lines across the dark surface. Cities built into cliffsides sparkled with lights. And in the sky above the planet, dragons flew, thousands of them, millions of them. More dragons than Yuna could count. As her ship descended toward the capital city, the dragons began to move. They turned in the air. They formed patterns. They descended in perfect formation, all of them orienting toward her ship. The entire sky was full of dragons, and every single one of them was watching her arrive. Do-Hwan stood beside her at the window. His mouth hung open. "Yuna," he whispered, "what are you?" She did not have an answer. She was a mail courier. She was nobody. But nobody did not make an empire kneel. The High Council chamber was the largest room Yuna had ever seen. It was carved into the heart of a mountain, and the ceiling was so high that clouds formed near the top. 13 ancient dragons sat in a circle, and Yuna stood in the center, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. These dragons were old. Their scales had faded with age, but power still radiated from them like heat from a fire. They had ruled the empire for thousands of years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, and now they looked at Yuna with cold, measuring eyes. The largest dragon sat at the head of the circle. His scales shifted between gold and white like sunlight on snow. His name was Gumryong, and he was the Grand Sovereign, the highest authority in the empire. When he spoke, His voice filled the chamber like thunder. "So this is the one who makes my soldiers kneel." Yuna said nothing. What could she say? "I do not believe in prophecies," Gumryong continued. "I believe in power. Real power. Power that can be seen and measured." He leaned forward, and his eyes burned like twin suns. "Show me your power, human. Prove that you are what they say you are." "I cannot," Yuna said. Her voice was barely above a whisper in that massive space. "I do not have any power. I am just a courier." "Then the prophecy is false." "Maybe it is." This answer seemed to surprise him. He had expected her to argue, to defend herself, to claim importance. Her simple acceptance threw him off balance. Another council member spoke. "The blood memory does not lie. Every dragon who sees her feels it. The recognition is too strong to be coincidence." "Then explain why she cannot demonstrate her abilities," Gumryong demanded. "Perhaps the power is dormant. Perhaps it needs to be awakened." The council debated among themselves. Yuna stood and listened, feeling like a piece of furniture being discussed. They talked about her like she was not there. They talked about her like she was not a person at all, just a problem to be solved. Finally, Gumryong raised his claw for silence. "There is one way to know for certain," he said. "The Cavern of Origins. If she truly carries the first flame, the cavern will not harm her. If she is merely human, she will burn like any other creature." A murmur went through the council. Even some of the ancient dragons looked uncomfortable. Yuna did not know what the Cavern of Origins was, but she could guess from their reactions. "You want me to enter a place that will kill me if I am normal?" "Yes." "And if I refuse?" Gumryong's eyes narrowed. "You do not refuse the High Council." From somewhere behind her, Yuna heard Dowan shouting. Guards were holding him back. He was yelling that this was murder, that they could not do this, that she was innocent. His voice cracked with fear and anger. Yuna looked at the dragons surrounding her. She looked at their ancient faces and their cold eyes. She thought about her small room on Station 12. She thought about her mother, who had died delivering packages just like her. She thought about her entire life of being invisible, being nothing, being nobody. Something inside her shifted. A warmth she had never noticed before began to pulse in her chest. It felt like a heartbeat, but deeper, older. "I will go," she said. The Cavern of Origins was beneath the city, deep underground where the planet's heart still burned. The entrance was a tunnel carved into black stone, and heat poured out of it like breath from a living thing. Dragons waited at the entrance, but none of them followed her in. This was a journey she had to make alone. Yuna walked into the darkness. The temperature rose with every step. First it was warm, then hot, then unbearable. Her clothes began to smoke. Her skin should have blistered. But somehow she kept walking. The heat wrapped around her like a blanket, and instead of pain, she felt comfort. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern filled with molten rock. Rivers of lava flowed across the floor. The air itself seemed to burn. No living creature could survive here. Nothing could survive here. Yuna walked across the lava like it was solid ground. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that this place felt familiar. It felt like coming home after a long journey. Memories that were not hers began to surface in her mind. She saw stars being born. She saw darkness becoming light. She saw a universe that was empty and cold until something decided to create warmth. In the center of the cavern, she found it. A crystal hung suspended in the air, glowing with inner fire. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It pulsed with life, and when Yuna approached it, it pulsed faster, as if it recognized her. She reached out and touched it. Light exploded through her. Knowledge poured into her mind, too fast to understand, too vast to contain. She saw everything the first flame-bearer had seen. She felt everything the first flame-bearer had felt. For one endless moment, she was connected to the beginning of all things. Then it was over, and she was standing in the cavern, holding the crystal in her palm. It had shrunk to the size of an egg, but it burned with the same ancient fire. Yuna walked back through the tunnel. She walked through the heat and the darkness, carrying light in her hand. When she emerged from the cavern entrance, 1,000 dragons were waiting. They saw the crystal. They saw her, unburned and alive. One by one, they began to kneel, the soldiers, the council members, even the ancient ones who had doubted her. Only Gumryong remained standing. His face showed no expression, but his claws dug into the stone beneath him. Before anyone could speak, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed across the sky. Dragons lifted their heads in confusion and fear. A soldier ran forward, breaking all protocol. "Grand Sovereign, ships have been detected at the edge of the system, thousands of them. They bear the mark of the Void Eaters." Yuna did not know what Void Eaters were, but from the terror on every dragon face, she understood that something very bad had just arrived. And somehow, she knew they had come for her. The war began before anyone was ready. Void Eaters were not like any enemy the Empire had faced. They were creatures of anti-energy, born in the darkness before the universe existed. They had no bodies that could be touched. They had no ships that could be destroyed. They were shadows that moved through space, consuming everything in their path. Beiko explained it to Yuna as dragons scrambled around them, preparing for battle. In the oldest memories, there is a war. The first flame-bearer fought them once, long ago. She pushed them back into the void, but she could not destroy them. Nothing can destroy them. They are the opposite of creation itself. Then how did she win? Yuna asked. She did not win alone. She channeled her power through dragons. Our fire, combined with her flame, became something stronger, something that could burn even the darkness. Yuna looked at the crystal in her hand. It glowed softly, pulsing with warmth. I do not know how to do that. Neither do we. That knowledge was lost when the first bearer left us. The first attack hit the outer defense stations. Yuna watched from a command center as reports came in. Ships went dark. Soldiers stopped responding. The Void Eaters did not kill quickly. They consumed slowly, draining light and heat and life, until nothing remained but cold emptiness. Dragon warriors flew out to meet the enemy. Their fire lit up the space around them, beautiful and terrible. But the fire only slowed the Void Eaters. It did not stop them. Dragons began to fall, their flames going out one by one like candles in a storm. "We are losing," Gumryong said. He stood beside Yuna, his massive form tense with frustration. He had not kneeled to her. He refused to accept what everyone else believed, but he was not stupid. He knew they needed whatever power she had. "I want to help," Yuna said, "but I do not know how." "Then figure it out. You claim to carry the first flame. Use it." "I do not claim anything. I never asked for this." Gumryong turned his burning eyes on her. "What you asked for does not matter. What matters is what you are. My people are dying. If you have any power at all, now is the time." Dowan found her later, sitting alone in a quiet corridor while chaos raged around them. He sat down beside her without speaking. They had been friends for years, and sometimes silence was better than words. "I am scared," Yuna finally said. "Me too. Everyone is looking at me like I can save them. But I am just a courier. I carry packages. I do not fight wars." Dowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you remember when you first started working? You were so nervous. You got lost constantly. You delivered things to the wrong places." Yuna almost smiled. "I was terrible. You were learning, and you got better." You became the best courier on the station." He looked at her. "Maybe this is the same thing. Maybe you just need to learn. People will die while I am learning. People will die anyway if you do nothing." The Void Eaters broke through the outer defenses that night. They poured toward Hwaryong like a wave of darkness. Dragon fire filled the sky, but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. Baiko came to Yuna as she watched the battle from the command center. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have explained before." "What is it?" "The first flame bearer did not fight by herself. She bonded with dragons. She shared her fire with them, and they shared their strength with her. Together they created something neither could make alone. Bonded. What does that mean? It means trust, complete trust, opening yourself to another being and letting them into your flame." Baiko lowered his head. "Dragons have forgotten how to do this. We became proud. We convinced ourselves we needed nothing and no one, but that pride is killing us now." Yuna thought about this. "Gumryong will never trust me. He does not even believe I am real. Then you must trust him first. The flame always begins with offering." The battle reached the capital's shields. Void Eaters pressed against the barrier and cracks began to appear. Dragons fell back, exhausted, their fire dimming. In the command center, officers shouted orders that nobody could follow. Everything was falling apart. Yuna walked out onto a balcony overlooking the city. The sky was full of darkness and dying light. She could feel the Void Eaters out there, hungry and patient. They had waited eons for this moment. They had come to extinguish the flame that had wounded them so long ago. She closed her eyes and reached inside herself. The crystal in her hand grew warm. The fire in her chest expanded. She thought about what Baiko had said. Trust. Offering. Opening herself completely. She reached out, not with her hands, but with her flame. She searched for Gumryong's presence and found it like a star burning with pride and fear and desperate hope. She did not push. She did not demand. She simply offered herself, all of herself, without holding anything back. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Gumryong's voice echoed in her mind. "What are you doing?" "Asking you to trust me." "I do not trust humans." "I know. Trust me anyway." The silence stretched. Outside, the shields cracked further. Dragons screamed as Void Eaters consumed them. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years was moments from falling. Then Yuna felt something change. Gumryong's resistance crumbled. His pride, his fear, his doubt, all of it fell away. He opened himself to her flame, and she poured her light into him. The effect was immediate. Gumryong roared, and fire exploded from his mouth. But it was not normal dragon fire. It was white, brilliant, burning with the heat of creation itself. It tore through the nearest Void Eaters like sunlight through shadow. They screamed, a sound that had never been heard before, and dissolved into nothing. Other dragons felt the connection. They reached toward Yuna's flame, tentative at first, then desperate. One by one, she let them in. One by one, their fire transformed. The sky filled with white light. But there were too many Void Eaters, too many shadows. Even with transformed fire, the dragons could not be everywhere at once. For every enemy destroyed, 3 more appeared. Yuna burned brighter, trying to reach more dragons. But she was running out. She could feel her flame being spent, piece by piece, given away to others. She understood now what the first flame bearer had done. She had not just channeled power. She had given herself away until nothing remained. To save the Empire, Yuna would have to do the same. Yuna made her decision alone. She did not tell Gumryong. She did not tell Baiko. She did not tell Do-wan. They would try to stop her, and there was no time for arguments. The first flame bearer had scattered herself across the universe. She had planted pieces of her fire in countless species, including humans. That was why humans had survived their dying world. That was why they had found their way to this galaxy. They carried sparks inside them, small and dormant, waiting to be awakened. Yuna understood now. She was not special because she was different from other humans. She was special because she remembered what all humans had forgotten. And if she could remember, maybe she could help others remember too. She closed her eyes and reached out with her flame. Not to dragons this time. To humans. To the millions of ordinary people scattered across the empire. To the workers and servants and couriers who had lived their whole lives being invisible. She found them like tiny stars in an endless darkness. Each one carried a spark. Each one had the potential for fire. They just needed someone to show them how to burn. On Station 12, Do-Wan felt something strange in his chest. He was standing in the courier depot, watching news reports of the battle on Hwaryong, feeling helpless and afraid. Then warmth spread through him, starting in his heart and flowing outward to his fingers and toes. He looked at his hands. They were glowing. Around him, other humans gasped. They stumbled. They stared at each other with wide eyes as light began to shine from within them. Not bright like Yuna's flame, but steady. Real. Across the empire, in every station and colony and ship where humans lived, the same thing happened. People who had never been special suddenly discovered that they had always carried fire inside them. They had just never known how to let it out. Yuna felt them awakening. Thousands, millions. Each spark was small, but together they formed a web of light that stretched across 3 galaxies. On Hwaryong, the battle changed. Dragons were no longer alone. Human soldiers who had served as support crews suddenly stepped forward, their hands burning with white fire. Human pilots flew their small ships into the darkness, leaving trails of light behind them. Human workers on the ground looked up at the sky and added their flames to the fight. The Void Eaters had expected one flame to extinguish. Instead, they found an empire full of flames. Gumryong fought at the front lines, his fire burning brighter than it ever had. He felt Yuna's presence in his mind, felt her strength flowing through him, but he also felt something else. He felt her fading. "What are you doing?" he demanded through their connection. "What needs to be done? You are killing yourself. I am sharing myself. There is a difference." "Yuna, stop. We can find another way." But she did not stop. She kept giving, kept sharing, kept pouring her light into every human who needed it. The crystal in her hand grew dim. The fire in her chest grew smaller. She was a candle burning at both ends. Do-Wan arrived on Hwaryong through a military transport, pushing past guards who tried to stop him. He found Yuna on the balcony where she had first reached out to the dragons. She was kneeling, her body shaking, her flame almost spent. "Yuna!" He ran to her side and grabbed her shoulders. She was cold. Her light was nearly gone. "What did you do? What did you do?" "What she needed to do," Beko said. He had been watching from nearby, his old eyes wet with tears. "The first flame-bearer did the same thing. She gave herself away to save us." "No." Do-Wan held his friend tighter. "No. Take it back. Take the fire back." "I cannot," Yuna whispered. "It does not belong to me anymore." But something unexpected happened. The flames she had shared began to flow back. Humans across the empire felt Yuna fading. They felt the woman who had awakened them growing cold. And without planning it, without discussing it, they made a choice. They offered their fire back to her. Not all of it. Just enough. Dragons did the same. The bond Yuna had created worked both ways. She had given them light, and now they returned the gift. Yuna gasped as warmth flooded through her. The crystal in her hand brightened. The fire in her chest roared back to life. But it was different now. It was not just her fire. It was shared fire made of millions of flames burning together. She stood up. The Void Eaters felt it. They felt the shift in power, the moment when a single flame became a universe of flames. They had waited eons to destroy the first flame bearer. Instead, they found something the original had never been. She was not alone anymore. Yuna raised her hand, and light exploded across the sky. But it was not just her light. It was the light of every human who had awakened. It was the light of every dragon who had bonded with her. It was an empire burning together, refusing to let the darkness win. The Void Eaters screamed. They fled. They scattered into the void like shadows at dawn. They were not destroyed, for they could never truly be destroyed. But they were broken, weakened, driven so far back that they would not return for eons. The war was over. 6 months later, Yuna returned to Station 12. She had been offered everything. Titles, palaces, worship. She had refused it all. She did not want to be a goddess or a queen. She just wanted to go home. The station was different now. Humans walked through the corridors with their heads held high. Dragons nodded to them as equals, not masters. The Empire had changed. It had learned that strength came from connection, not from standing alone. Yuna put on her gray uniform and loaded her hover cart with packages. Do-Hwan joined her, complaining about the increased workload. "Everyone expects more from humans now," he grumbled. "We used to be invisible. It was easier." "You do not really miss being invisible." "No, but I miss being lazy." Yuna smiled. They walked through the corridors, delivering packages together. People waved at them. Children ran up to say hello. Small flames flickered in human eyes everywhere she looked. Her last delivery of the day was to the Dragon Ambassador's quarters. New guards stood at the entrance, younger than the ones who had first bowed to her. When they saw her, they did not kneel. They nodded respectfully, as one equal to another. A young dragon waited at the door, barely hatched, with scales that had not yet settled into their final color. The hatchling looked up at Yuna with curious eyes. "Are you the flame bearer?" it asked. Yuna kneeled down to meet its gaze. "I am a courier," she said. "I carry things where they need to go." The hatchling thought about this for a moment. "That sounds important." Yuna smiled. "It is." She delivered the package, said goodbye to the young dragon, and walked back to her cart. The station hummed around her, full of life and light. She was still nobody special. She still carried mail. But now, when she looked at her hands, she could see a small flame burning inside them. And when she looked at the people around her, she could see flames in them too. They had always been there. Everyone had just forgotten how to see them. Yuna pushed her cart down the corridor, a mail courier in a gray uniform, carrying fire in her heart and packages in her hands. The universe was vast and dark, and there were still shadows waiting in the void. But the darkness would have to wait. Right now, she had deliveries to make, and there was nothing more important than that.